Welcome back to the Bool Boys Pod. Episode 21. We'll bring in Sebastian and returning Brian shortly. Just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on where the podcast is going and what our roadmap is for the next couple months. We're approaching nearly 6 months of doing this. It's been really fun. I'm really happy Brian and Sebastian agreed to do this, and Brian's ability to edit and do AV stuff has been very helpful. And Sebastian's enormous bank of sports knowledge is obviously very helpful as well. So really glad those guys have been able to come on the pod. And then, of course, all the guests we have, Andrew, Arjun, you've seen everyone almost, Johnny, JT, goes on, Jesse. So really glad those guys came on, Sean as well. So we have one more Bool Boy left. That's Connor. We'll have to get him on soon, and maybe honorary Bool Boy Nom. But besides that, I think what we're going is we've kind of come to the conclusion that 2-hour episodes is a little bit too long. And even though we want to talk about everything, it's just not economical, and it's not really responsible to. We're spreading ourselves too thin there. So what I'm trying to do is really focus our topics for the next couple months and see how that goes. We'll try to keep it to about an hour 15, talk maybe one sport or two sport segments at top, and then immediately go to Bool or Bust or top 5. And so we're basically cutting out hopefully 30 to 45 minutes. If there is something that is really interesting and worthy talking about, or any of the guys really want to talk about anything in particular, we'll have a second episode later in the week. And I think that's how we're going to do it for now. We'll try this for a little while. And then the second thing is I wanted to talk about a recent EDM concert me, Sebastian, Andrew, Johnny, a couple other people went to. As you may or may not know, we were really big, especially me, was really big into EDM in the early 2010s, like almost 12, 13 years ago. There was a long break where no one really picked it up. And then now, as we've gotten into early 30s, it's just the novelty and nostalgia of it is kind of calling to me. And so the last couple of years, I've been to 2 more EDM concerts that I hadn't been to for almost 8 or 10 years. And while the previous one in 2021 was excellent, this one was a little bit different. It had all these great artists that everyone knows in that space. 2 for me were like Armin van Buuren, Cosmic Gate, Ferry Corsten, Andrew Baer, like all well-known names in that tech trance space. But where the venue was sick, it was at the Queen Mary Pier by the hotel ship. And if you really wanted to, you could pay an exorbitant amount to get a hotel room and walk back and forth through the venue grounds. It seemed like a cool prospect. But in logistics for Uber people or rideshare people was very easy. So in that respect, it was good. It's just that for me, it was a little disappointing musically. I don't know if just because I haven't been keeping up with EDM for the last however many years, it's kind of tough for me to know what's really in. So I have this preconceived notion that it should be all the stuff that I used to like from like 10 or 12 years ago. And that's simply not the case. These DJs always play what's new and what they need, what their newest albums are. And for me, it's just not really what I'm into anymore. So it was a little disappointing in that respect. It was super fun to go with Andrew, super fun to go with Sebastian. Johnny was there, didn't get a chance to meet up with him, but the friends, the venue, the drinks, all were great. It's just the music for me doesn't really hit like it used to. And it's unreasonable of me to expect DJs to play their old music, but to me that's what makes a good DJ, is able to modernize their old music and tracks with new tracks and make mashups and make cool intros and stuff and constantly bring back those things. in a new and fresh way. So that was a little disappointing, especially from Armin, Ferry. Um, there was one more I can't remember, but it was a little disappointing in that regard. So I don't know when I'll be back, but like I said, I think I might have some unreasonable expectations of what it was like, and this is just how it's going to be now. It's also when you have 1 hour sets, what can you do really? 1 hour and a half sets, so it's tough for these people. But like I mentioned, a lot of fun. Really happy Sebastian came and Andrew came. It was a good time, but the music just doesn't hit like it used to. So it's kind of a shame. So we'll bring in Sebastian and Brian, and then we'll kind of get into sports. Just wanted to talk about that because I don't getting the group and the homies up to do these type of things is tough now, and then you really want it to be worth it. And it was just, for me, it didn't. It was worth it, but it was just it was just tough. It wasn't like it used to be. It didn't hit like it used to. So there's a little bit of disappointment. All right, let's bring in the guys. All right, welcome back, Bool Boys podcast, episode 21. And we have a very special guest, aka OG founder, returning. Brian, glad to have you back, man.
Hello, sirs. Good to be back. Back in Irvine under maybe not the most favorable circumstances, but life goes on and we keep pushing. So yeah, glad to be back.
Yeah, and Sebastian, how are you doing, man?
Been better. I think we were talking about this in a pre-pod, but chugging along.
How was football for you today?
It was good. I mean, the Cowboys continued beating up bad teams, and other results have been okay. Fantasy's going well, so that's all I can really ask for. Cowboys and fantasy.
So I'm gonna lose to Sean. It looks like I'm down 2 rebounds, and he has LeBron playing, and I have Giddy, which will make it a 3-5. I was counting my chickens before they hatched because I was expecting a good result for Sean, who's the worst team in the conference, but did not happen. And maybe I played my cards wrong, but yeah.
I think this is my first week accepting that the team's just shit, dude. Like, honestly, was doing pretty well earlier in the week, and then just random missed games. Oh, but that happens to everybody, right? Random missed games, and it looks like unless something goes wrong, it will be a 4-4 if Shangun happens to score 20 points in the next quarter. But we'll see. We'll keep going on, and unfortunately, I did think Clay was not going to be as good, but he is so unbelievably washed. It's shocking, dude. I didn't think he'd be this bad. Like, he doesn't even look like he knows what he's doing anymore. Like, it's pretty bad.
A lot of people say it'll be his last year on the Warriors, right?
Yeah, they're a hard team to watch because Steph is literally doing everything by himself at this point.
Draymond's gone for 5 games. Not looking good there. Yeah. Anything else on NBA kind of vaguely before we go into 2 specific teams I wanted to talk about? One is, 3 actually. The Rockets played the Clippers on Friday, and it was a very big game, I thought, for 2 reasons. Because Clippers were on the precipice of losing their 7th game in a row, whereas the Rockets would have been effectively 7-3 if they won, which I don't think anyone thought that their trajectory would be like that. So ended up being the Clippers won. Harden had a big shot at the end, but what I thought I would do is kind of go over my notes on the game, and then I'll hand it off to you guys. Kind of give me what your thoughts are on the Clippers and the Rockets as a whole. So what I saw was Clippers came out with a point to prove, played really well in the first quarter, went up like 7 or 10 points. Harden, Kawhi both start off really well. Second quarter starts, and then Sengun kind of enters the fold. They start hitting some threes. They get back, bring it back. Couple of dynamic plays. I hadn't really watched a lot of the Rockets teams. Maybe you know more because you have this player, I think. But Jalen Green really impressed me. He's very athletic, and
Yes.
I didn't like. I always heard the name, and it was kind of like a Yeah, wasn't that the guy Bill Simmons kind of called out last year or year before, and they
Eh,
had a little tiff?
what
Yeah, it was.
happened was it was for the first all rookie team, and he had Herb Jones over Jalen Green, and somebody like mentioned Jalen Green. He's like, "Fuck Jalen Green," but he wasn't actually saying like "fuck Jalen Green." It was just in the context of the conversation, but it got blown up, and there was a huge controversy, and then Bill had to bring Jalen onto his pod, and Jalen actually came off as very likable.
But in retrospect, Jalen Green's going to be a much better player than Herb. I love Herb Jones, but Jalen Green's going to be a much better player. And it's typical Bill to like penalize bad teams for like the rookie teams, right? I think he does
That
that
was
a
part
lot.
of the reasoning. I think it's a complicated conversation. I don't think Herb Jones would ever be asked to do as much as Jalen. So yeah, you probably would say Jalen's going to have a better statistical career, but Herb Jones seems like he may be playing in bigger moments at a certain point because his type of player is pretty
That's
valuable
fair.
in today's
That's
NBA.
very fair. Okay, now let's just finish up a little rundown of the game. So then, as I mentioned, I hadn't seen a lot of Jalen Green, and he's so bouncy and dynamic, and I'm really impressed with him. And Sengun even more so. But third quarter starts, and I saw like a noticeable shift. It became like one notch more competitive, almost like a semi-playoff game, and it became very cagey intense. They go to the fourth. I mean, PG saves them with the end of the quarter three. Uh, go to the fourth. You see a lot of frustrations. Russ gets a tee. A lot of bitching and moaning about calls, even more so than normal. And then basically just through some big shot making, especially with Harden, they come out with the win. So anything on the game specifically before we go over the two teams, Clippers and Houston?
Yeah, I think for me it was Harden that iced the game, right, with the and 1-3. And specifically with the game, it's that even though Houston is better, and this will go a little bit when we start talking about the teams themselves, even though Houston is a little bit better than we expected, and the Clippers with Harden are performing pretty bad, it still felt like with what the Clippers are expecting this to be, or maybe they're just accepting that it's not, that the fact that they had to really scrape it out with some kind of miraculous Harden three, and in the late moments, it did kind of feel like a hot potato, like who's going to take it? Should I take it? Should you take it? Kind of situation. I don't think it bodes very well for the future. I mean, it's okay. Harden finally had a good game, but it's starting to kind of just seem like one of the like a much shittier version of uh Lakers '04 or something. Like there's like a lot of old stars. They're not even that old, right? But like a little bit past the prime, and you're looking at the league that's just young and yeah, exactly, dynamic, and these guys can't just pull these victories out all the time if they want to continuously be good.
So that really leads me to my one of my points in the Clippers. But anything on the game, Sebastian, before we go over the teams?
I do kind of agree with what Brian was saying regarding it's slightly concerning that they had to scrape this out scrape it out in such a fashion when they should have been very desperate. I still think the defensive lapses that you get out of Harden and Russ are pretty impactful. There was a few possessions that highlighted that in this game, and I also think like the Clippers kind of were very fortunate with some of the whistles they got late in the game.
Oh,
Yeah,
for
you
sure.
mentioned that. Yeah.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
I don't necessarily know that it was like the deciding factor, but I think it's funny that they complained as much as they did about the officiating, and then towards the end of the game, it definitely benefited them.
You hate to see it, but you're right, Sebastian. So you both mentioned, well, Brian really mentioned this, and I did a little bit of research into why like the Clippers are actually not that bad defensively. Their defense, they're like top half or top 4 or 5 in the Western Conference for how many points they allow per game. I was like, well, why is that? Because as you mentioned, Russ and James are so porous, but really, I don't know how or why, but 3 of their players are in the top 50 in like defensive Raptor and defensive win share. And you can probably guess the second 2 of them, PG and Kawhi. But do you want to guess who the third is?
Zoo?
Zoo. It's Zoo, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
not surprised.
Not too
And
surprised.
he always seems like he's a step behind, but he's apparently a very impactful defensive player, and they just
His
can't.
rim protection.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good
yeah.
body. He's just a good body to have in there.
Positionally, maybe he's a little bit better. Yeah, getting better, but yeah, they can't keep up for like how bad defensively Russ and James are on the perimeter, and it's like leaking holes. And what I kind of found was that the reason why their defensive points per game is actually a little bit flattering is because they're actually one of the slower teams in the league. They play at a very slow pace. I think they're bottom third in pace. And so that was the first thing on their defense. And the second thing, anything on the defense before I go to my second point on Clippers, guys?
Quick point on, even though you have these players who are ranking high in the defensive, individual advanced defensive stats, I think a lot of the issue comes from when you're actually watching them, especially when it comes to Harden. Russ sometimes as well, but he does have the effort. Is just, yeah, the timeliness of a lot of the bad defensive
Yeah.
plays. Like, oh, like we really need to lock down on this one. The other
And he
team is on like
gambles.
on a short run or something like that. You just need to like be solid for a play, and then it's like, oh, he just does the complete opposite. It is a the guy gets right past him at like a critical point. So even though the numbers might support that as a team, they're okay or they're pretty good, like I think you mentioned, but it's how it's happening at certain moments of the game that I think is really, you can see really badly.
They both have a bad tendency to lose their man on shots also. So you see a lot of their guys getting offensive rebounds
It's a good
with
point.
them not paying attention, essentially. Harden especially. Harden has historically always been really bad at this, where his back is just like turned and his guy just runs behind him and grabs the board, and it's like, all right, man, like
He looks
this is the
behind his
fourth.
shoulder and he's like
Yeah,
surprised. Yeah.
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 It's like the fourth quarter. You kind of have to box out now. This is where you're supposed to box out.
Yeah, he just wants to be like the offensive fulcrum and not have any defensive responsibilities. But at the stage of his career, it's not going to really work like that.
No, yeah.
And especially in this team. Second point on Clippers was that, yeah, Kawhi starts hard, but he always seems to degrade by the end of the game and take a lot of like tough shots that when your legs are there, it looks good and he'll make them. But at the end of the game in clutch situations, it's not working well. And Sebastian, you mentioned to me, I think pre-pod or some other day, that one of your friends told you that he's like one of the worst clutch shooters or something. What was that?
I believe
This year?
Yeah.
since he's joined the
Oh,
Clippers,
okay.
he actually
Oh,
is
really?
like
Wow.
the worst shooting percentage wise in the last 4 minutes of games, I believe. And it makes sense if you really pay attention to it, because their offense comes to a standstill. He ISOs and dribbles the air out of the ball until there's like 10 seconds left on a shot clock. He doesn't have the burst anymore to get to the spots that he necessarily wants to get to. So he's always forcing these pretty tough mid-range jumpers. It's a low percentage shot.
Bingo. Yeah,
Yeah.
bingo. Exactly. And he could get away with it when he was super athletic and he could jump higher than people and stuff or quicker than people, but he can't now. Uh,
He also has a
he's
very naturally flat shot. So
mm,
I guess, that also makes sense that when your legs are gone and uh, if you have a naturally flat shot, then it starts to clang pretty bad.
so he's good for 26 and 4, and that's being generous. That's rounding up. And 2 steals. Okay, playing 35 minutes a game when he does play, which seems okay, right?
It's pretty good.
But it's not. It's is it a $50 million player? Good, I don't know, 50+ million player. But what I saw and over the trend of his last couple of years is his free throw percentage has kind of plummeted, and
Hmm.
he's taking the second lowest in his career this year, 4.6, which is actually pretty high for someone like him who just shoots jump shots. But when you look at that and combine it with his rebounding, which has declined too, he was a great rebounder. Those two metrics for like a wing guard, the free throws and the free throw percentage and the rebounding, kind of show a decline. And Siebes, you mentioned that he's a ball stopper. That's another problem with the Clippers is they have 4 ball stoppers, even 5 sometimes. And
I'd
so,
say they have like 3. I think Paul is capable of playing off ball pretty well. He just would prefer not to, I think. And then
that's
Norm
fair.
definitely,
But I was going to actually say Russ is probably the most capable of making a quick pass on that team. It doesn't seem like Harden and Kawhi have that in their arsenal. They just can't
yeah.
get the pass it quickly. And PG can. You're right. He's played like that, but he's the best player now, so he shouldn't have to play like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what I saw from Clippers. They have a Kawhi problem, and defensively, even though they have some solid defensive options, they're still a bad defensive team. Um, Rockets was just I'm very impressed by Sengun and Jalen Green, and they are ahead of schedule. That was my read on it. Anything on Houston, guys?
One thing about Jalen this year, I would say, because I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of his game in the past, but Ime seems to have gotten through to him that even if your shot's not falling, you can contribute to winning in other ways, because there'll be games this season where he won't be shooting a great clip, but then he'll go out and get like 8 rebounds or like 6 assists, and he'll do more work defensively as well. And I would say in the previous years with Silas there was no there wasn't like a stern voice to tell Jalen these things. I feel like Silas just kind of let them run amok, and it was horrible at most of the time. But yeah, I've been impressed with Jalen's growth. I think the last step is to put it all together consistently, where he can do those rebounding and assist type games when he's also scoring. Because right now it seems like it's one or the other. Like if he scores a lot, he's not going to go put all the effort in onto rebounding or setting up his teammates. Whereas, yeah, and then if he's not scoring well, he will put all the effort into that. And it feels like there needs to be a little more balance. But Jalen's leap this year has been pretty good.
You're reaping the benefits, aren't you?
Yeah, I would say not as much as I would like. It's not the most fantasy friendly player at times.
What are his percentages like?
That's the question, isn't it?
So he's shooting. I can pull it up real quick.
I think anything above like 44 is a win. 43.
Yeah, I don't think it's over 44. Yeah, it's 40%. He's shooting 40%.
Oh, no.
Ouch.
And 40,
Pretty good
80.
volume too.
I'm not sure what the 3-point percentage is, but and another weird thing about his game is usually he's a really solid free throw shooter, and then there will be days where he goes like 2 for 7. And it's like, why did this just happen today, bro? Like, why are your free throws all of a sudden horrible?
Dude,
it just kind of speaks to a lack of focus.
That's the thing in fantasy. That's like the kicker. It's like somebody will be averaging like 44%, which isn't good on the year. But then the way that it goes is that they'll have a week shooting 55%, and then the next week they'll shoot 25.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean? And
that
you're
would 25.
It happens.
What the fuck, dude? Like,
25 would be welcome this week because Jalen is shooting 20% this week.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
pretty
rough,
bad.
dude. That's really rough. I'm sorry.
For sure.
But
Brian-
yeah, it's not the best.
Ryan, final word on this game of the week. Anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, just on Houston, yeah, I think, like you said, like everybody kind of said, ahead of schedule. I think credit to Ime. Being a good coach is something that should be a part of the conversation here. This isn't what we were expecting from Houston, but he's able to get the best out of Jalen. Şengün is obviously killing it. He has kind of like that baby Jokic vibe, great passer. They're really utilizing him as a big, can score pretty efficiently. And yeah, I think like I'm kind of interested to see if they can keep this up for the rest of the year, because let's just use Utah for example. Last year, they started off pretty hot, and people were saying, "Oh man, like are they gonna continue to be good?" And they just kind of fell off as the year went on. This looks sustainable, just given due to the young talent, and I think Jalen wanting to prove himself. But we'll have to see. But overall, I'm giving some credit to Ime for the good job he's doing over there.
Oh, for sure. Definitely a big part of the reason they're doing well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break. You want one more word, Steve?
Yeah, just I'm really glad that Ime has like common sense and a set of eyes that work, because the most frustrating thing about the Silas era was his refusal to recognize that Şengün should be running your offense essentially. And like there would be so many post-game interviews with players who had just played the Rockets where they'd be like, yeah, man, that Şengün's really good. They should probably run their offense through him. Like I think Ant said that at one point. I think Jokic said it at one point. And Steven Silas was just kind of too inept to realize it. You can probably tell I did not like Steven Silas as a coach. I thought he was one of the worst
Was
we've
he
ever seen.
driving the tankmobile?
I would say that they still could have tanked even if Şengün was running the offense last year.
That's
It just would
fair.
have
Okay.
had them a year ahead of schedule in development. But Şengün,
That's
he's
very
solid
true.
as hell. Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back with a Dallas resurgence. Okay, we're back talking about Dallas, who, as it stands, is top 3 or 4 in the West. I had written them off completely. I thought there was a talent drain, and like they hadn't done a good job of supplying a generational talent with the right tools to win. And their cap, in my opinion, was kind of fucked. Besides, I mean, Kyrie taking that slight discount really helped them, but when I really looked into it, besides Hardaway and maybe Kleber, who's playing 18 minutes a night and getting paid $12 million, which is a bit much for a backup center.
He also just sucks ass, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
You know, if he was solid, I don't think it'd be that bad, but he also just kind of sucks ass.
And
He fell off really fast.
Yeah. Hardaway's playing out of his mind right now, so it looks okay now. But 18 million for him, who's really inconsistent, is tough too. But what I saw is they've done a pretty good job taking chances on like desperate players or like projects. Exum, McGee, Curry. I don't know, McGee's not really a project, but like they're paying him $2.5 million a year, so they're getting value out of them. And then they drafted Lively on a $4 million rookie scale, which is really good too. And then they extended Josh Green. So they made some decisions, and it seems like it's working out. What were your thoughts, Brian, when you kind of look at the Dallas season as a whole?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, they're doing better than I expected. I guess some of the notes of why is I mentioned it a little bit earlier to you guys, but given the way that last season ended, I think there was definitely an effort for Kyrie and Luka, either through training camp or just in general, having had time to mesh, and also an emphasis on how that kind of duo is going to work. Kyrie has definitely taken a little bit of a step back, being a little bit more of a facilitator. I would say sometimes to the detriment. He does disappear at times, but there are of course the other games, even though they lost like yesterday or 2 days ago, where they both go for 35. So I think there's just a better cadence going on with how they're going to run that offense. Luka is doing Luka things. Of course, he's one of my favorite players and an amazing player in general, and he's continuing to do what he does. Grant Williams is a great compliment. He's exactly what they needed. Somebody who's just a knockdown 3-point shooter. If he's open, Luka will get you an open 3, knock it down. I think that's something that they really struggled with last year, having so many open looks, and Kleber being one of them, but just super clanks, and that those clanks would end up costing the game for them. And then lastly, like you mentioned, Hardaway's playing very well. He's notoriously very streaky, so I don't really expect this to be
I've seen so many Hardaway clanks, dude. Like just bricks.
Oh, like super bad. So I don't necessarily expect that to last, and just as an extension for the team as a whole. While I do, I'm happy for them, I guess, that they're doing well right now. I foresee a natural THJ regresses to the mean. He starts averaging 20% for the next 10 games. As lovey-dovey as it looks right now, I'm still on the lookout for a Kyrie meltdown somewhere down the road that
very apt.
will inevitably kind of end the floweriness to their great beginning. But all that being said, great beginning for them, and if they do continue it, then good for them. But I can't say I would predict that this would continue until the rest of the year, that they'd be a number 2 seed or even flirting with the 1 seed. I can't see it. Oh, 5. Okay. Well,
it changes.
They were like 2. It's just so early, but you know what I'm saying.
They crashed out of the tournament, but they were effectively last week. I think they were 3rd or something. So
yeah.
I agree with everything you said, Brian. And I think it is important to note that they have one of the easiest schedules coming in. Uh, Now they have a top third, like effectively top 10 hardest schedule for the rest of the season. So it could be a little regression on the mean. Sebastian, I'll posit you this and you tell me what you think is the biggest factor in how they're doing well. Is it the easy schedule? Is it
Yes.
Luca for like pulling them through, or is it actually kid or some good coaching? I don't know.
So I'd lean that it's main. If you look at who they've beaten, I'm not sure they have a win against a team with a. Well, I guess they beat the Clippers and they did beat the Pelicans, but for the most part, most of their wins have come against teams who you would not expect to see in the playoffs this year. Um, it's definitely been better than I thought because last year this same Mavs team was losing to a lot of teams who didn't end up making the playoffs. So at least they've cleaned that up where they are beating the teams they're supposed to beat. But I don't know how much you can trust them to stay in the top six because a lot of the issues that you guys have highlighted are definitely going to creep back up. Like I don't think Tim Hardaway is going to be playing this well. Um, I think
Will
there's
Lively have the
positive.
stamina like to go the full season
I
and play
think
like this?
Lively will probably get better or more consistent because he does have games still where he's not really doing much, and then
Hmm.
he'll alternate with like a very good performance. I think Grant will start playing a little better. I don't think he's been shooting super well yet, but we know he can shoot pretty well. Um, I guess Grant is shooting really well from three. It's just I guess the games I've watched where he's shooting horribly. But yeah, I think they will fall back down to earth a little bit as their schedule gets harder, but I don't think they should completely crash out of the playoff picture like a lot of people were saying they would preseason.
You by that you mean basically a play-in team, right?
Yeah, play-in team, maybe fighting for six, but I don't see that. I feel like seven, eight is more likely.
And to Brian's point too, like Kyrie is always on really good behavior when he's playing for a contract. Now the contract has been signed, and he's has that security for 3 years. And there's a lot of issues he could be outspoken about going on in the world right now. So just he like
No comment.
yeah, no comment. That's fine. But like I expect a Brian like Brian mentioned the meltdown in some sort this year at the end of the year.
Yeah, it can
He's
honestly
due.
yeah, it can honestly just be as simple right now, like they're winning, so it's nice, but they go on, let's say, a 3-game losing streak, and all of a sudden, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello,
Kyrie
brother.
doing
Hello,
something,
brother.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You don't even know, right? Like, it could just be as simple as that. All of a sudden, the org is trying to hold them down after a 3-game losing streak or something like that.
Anything else on Dallas, guys? That's all I really had. I was just, as I mentioned when we were making the outline for the episode, I was looking at the NBA standings. I was just surprised at how high they were, and especially when I was so like outspoken about them being bad. I just was looking for some insight into what's going on, and why they're like this. I
I
do
have
think, yeah.
Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I said one last thing, I guess. One thing that I am on the lookout for is, I mean, this happens at the beginning of every season, is Luca in the MVP conversations, and the only reason why that interests me is because he is kind of hitting that point of his career. Obviously, he's still very young, but after years of good performance and essentially flaming out in the playoffs, and he is a good enough player to receive this. Like, is he actually able to kind of maintain that level of play and actually be a good enough team to win it? Is it still years off until that's happening? It's just that because he's been All NBA first team for the past several years, that's something that pops up at the beginning of every year, but inevitably flames out. I'm just curious how that's going to play out over the year.
I'm glad you brought that up. Don't you think the year they went to the conference finals, he had a legitimate shout to be like a top 2 or 3 MVP candidate?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
he's been flirting with it already. So I do think he's next in line, Brian. But you brought up an interesting question for me. Is and I'll ask this: do you think Jokic will win again MVP this year, or is there too much voter fatigue? Because technically, he's clearly the best player. He won the chip, and there's no reason not to give it to him except for voter fatigue.
I
I
think it's
think,
been reset
yeah,
because
same.
Embiid won it, and then now it's like, okay, but we look at Jokic and he's just amazing. As clearly the best player in the league, clearly the most impactful. So I think because Embiid won it last year, it's going to reset. But yeah, go ahead, Sebastian. I didn't mean to
I
cut you off.
think there's a few players who are making cases to be in the conversation this year outside of Jokic and Embiid, though. Um, I think it's hard not to look at Fox in Sacramento
Mhm.
and be like he should definitely be in the conversation. Do I think he'll take over from Jokic and win the actual MVP? No, but he should get some votes if he continues to play this way. And you kind of have to say like Bam could be in the conversation when you look at the numbers and all that he's contributing to on both ends of the floor. So I think it right now it's a little more interesting of a race than we've had in recent years. But yeah, ultimately
Didn't
I think
mention Tatum though, right? You don't
yeah,
think
Tatum
Tatum's in
too.
there?
No, Tatum could be in there too for sure. Their team's just so solid. I feel like he'll get docked for that.
Hmm.
But Jokic, I think when all the dust clears, I don't think voter fatigue would be a factor in it. Um,
So
but
that'll be number 4 though, right?
yeah, that would be no number 3 for him.
That's a 3 only.
Yeah, he has 2.
Okay, okay. Three's acceptable. When you get to 4 or 5, like it's really talking about like top 3 players in your hand, top 4 or 5 players in your
Yeah, I
that
think
you can
that's
count in
okay
your
though.
hand is so soon though. After 1, now he's on a different track. Like he needs to win a couple more, and then he'll solidify best center of all time or whatever,
Yeah, but
or
I
best
hate
play.
that
Like,
shit. Like, I feel like if you're the MVP, you should just win the MVP. I feel like it doesn't need to get so political. I get that it does, but like
yeah,
it really it always should. That's why I liked it when Jokic was just clearly winning it because it finally felt like there was like
dude,
people giving it to the person who was the MVP, like they do in baseball essentially. Like none of this happens in baseball. They give it to the guy who's the most valuable player. But for some reason the NBA has to be narrative driven. And
yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's kind of a problem with the league as a whole that it even boils down to awards that are supposed to be just naming the most valuable player.
No, like Steve's, I'd be ecstatic if he won MVP because it means he had a great year statistically, which would
Oh
be great for
yeah,
me. So I'm not opposed to it. Like I was just curious, like if they talk about it, like that's a primary reason why Embiid won. Like yeah, he was had a great year and was like the second best player in the league, but Jokic was still clearly better last year. It wasn't even like close. So he should have won last year, and they won the chip too. So enough
there's
said.
one very how am I going to delicately phrase this? One very large dumb person who works for ESPN who ruined the whole MVP race.
Very
Yeah,
large, very dumb.
yeah,
Yeah, I could
very
have been much
outspoken.
meaner. Yeah,
Yeah,
I could
very
have been much
outspoken.
meaner,
Yeah,
but that was me toning it down.
that's fair. That's a very good
Former
way to put it.
former altar boy.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't have to qualify it,
Yeah,
Tease.
yeah.
We
You
knew.
didn't have to clarify, dude. You didn't have to
We
clarify. You
knew.
should have kept it a little mysterious. You should have
Yeah.
kept it.
I think everybody knows who's very large and very dumb who works for ESPN.
Yeah. There's a couple options.
In basketball, though, there's
Okay.
one, I think.
Yeah. Uh, okay, that's all I had for Dallas. Let's come back with Blue or Bust. Sound good?
Yep.
Good.
All right, we're back. Blue or Bust, top 5. I'll start off this week, and we'll end with Brian. So I have a couple bulls and a bust that led to a bull. So bull, something I've picked up in the last couple weeks is, and I found incredibly useful, even highlighted even more so yesterday, was wipes. Just having wipes on hand in the car. Uh, at the event we went to yesterday, Sebastian, if you noticed those porta potties, they were not very pleasant to be in. And you walk out, and then you can just use a wipe. Don't have to touch anything. It's nice. And then also like you, in the car, anything spills, wipe it up, take it. It's a very convenient. It's very convenient. So I'm a big fan of wipes. Not for like wiping your ass, but just for cleanliness to have on. And the sub Bool is fanny packs. I bought a fanny pack for yesterday, and it was just incredibly convenient. I know why Arjun and Justin are down for these things now, and they're pushing the fanny pack life. It's just like everything is accessible right there. You can lock it. You know it's there. Like it's very easy to keep organized, and I was able to pack away more things than I would if I just went empty-handed. And apparently, I don't know if Steve's heard this, but a lot. You know, I mentioned like a lot of. I felt like I was getting groped from my phone a lot. Oh, nice! You brought it up. I see. Steve's fanny pack. Nice. Yeah. Well done.
It's over the shoulder, but same vibe.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know if you heard this, or I went on the Dreamstate Reddit and was just looking at it, and apparently like a lot of phones were getting stolen last night. And I just mentioned it to you, and I was like, I felt like I kept getting groped from my phone last night in the main stage, and apparently a lot of phones got stolen. So that's why the fanny packs also show security. Um, so a secondary bus that came out of last night. If you didn't know, I mentioned it. Me and Steve went to Dreamstate. It was fun with a good friend Andrew. Johnny was there too. But Steve's called me out for this, and after I got home, I thought about it, and I was like, okay, you're probably right. But bust was Travis, our first Uber driver, and it started out. He came and picked up at my dad's house, and the first thing he does is to shoot me the dirtiest look because I want to sit in the front seat. He just like picking up his thing, just gives me a dirty look, doesn't say anything, and then we went as we were getting approaching there. He didn't like he was just blindly following the route. He didn't calculate anything in time with regards to time. He was driving super slow until the detour happened, and then he decided to drive fast after that. He was like realizing he had to go like across Long Beach. And compared to the guy who brought us back, who is a saint, truly an angel,
Great
he,
driver.
like a great driver, very calm, didn't say anything about our friends in the back seat going off, and uh, he also like when I wanted to open the window, he opened the window. When I wanted to close the window, he's fine. And then I asked him if I could turn the air on. He's like, "Please, please, it's your car." And I was like,
Homie.
yeah, homie. And so when he compared to how bad Travis was,
Oh my.
yeah. And Steve's called me out. I said I apologized to him for the delay and the detour. And it wasn't our fault at all. And he's being a dick about it. I don't know why I said anything like that.
Did I call you out on that?
Yeah, you did.
I,
On the car ride back with the nice guy. You're like, you shouldn't have been nice to that Travis guy who's being a best. And I actually thought about it. Like, yeah, he was a busty driver. He did everything was bad about him.
yeah,
And yeah,
he was getting too close to cars too.
breaking late and stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it could have been bad. I brought up the jerky and he looked at me very weird. So I guess that's an appropriate response maybe to some eating beef jerky, but yeah. And then I guess the third bus is just fantasy this week. I'm going to lose to Sean. I thought it'd be an easy win, but the hubris is typical pride before the fall. And now I'm going to drop in the standing. So those are my three. I guess overall bus two, Bool would be Dreamstate. The venue was very cool. It was a good concert. It was fun to go with Siebes and Dr. Kyle. All right, Siebes, what are your Bool busts?
So pretty basic this week. I'll go Bool, Josh Dobbs, resuscitating my fantasy football season.
Oh, you have him.
I had to, man. I was in very bleak. I was in a very bleak situation where I was starting like Gardner Minshew every week, and it was awful. And
Oh,
I had
okay.
no other options, and here comes Josh Dobbs, and I take a chance on him because I knew he was pretty good, but I didn't realize that he would just instantly come in and be a fantasy QB1 for me, like where I don't have to even consider starting somebody else over him. And it makes it better because somebody was trying to swindle me in a trade for Kyler Murray, and I held firm and was like, I think I'll stick with Dobbs, and it's paid off so far. Granted, they lost tonight in real life, but he did help me win this week in fantasy. So that's my Bool. He seems to be the talk of the town right now anyway, so it's not that unique, but long live Dobbs.
Very
And
nice.
and he's inspired a potential fantasy name change for me, where a take on a 3-6 Mafia classic is where I'll leave it at.
Okay.
Slob on my Dobbs.
What are your prospects to win this year?
Right now it's looking decent. It was looking horrible for a while because I was wildly injured and had no quarterback, but now it looks pretty good. We'll see. I don't want
Nice.
to get
Okay.
ahead of myself. And then my bust is very basic as well. It's just not eating an adequate amount on days where you drink a lot. Yesterday,
That's a huge bust, dude.
yesterday I
You,
did not eat an appropriate amount, and I'm paying quite handsomely for it today, I'll say.
yeah, we were rushed. Probably a little bit my fault, but
No, it's
we
mine.
couldn't have. We couldn't like if we had waited any longer, we would probably got in like 8 or 9. So
Yeah.
the traffic really fucked us. If we didn't have any traffic and we got there 30 minutes, we could have picked a nice little quick to go spot like near there and walked over. It would have been fine. But yeah, a little rush. So, and I think you say that you just had like a safety toast before you left.
Yeah, basically, I had a piece of toast.
Yeah, I was gonna eat some like chicken and rice, but I just got too rushed, and so I ended up eating the jerky and trying to get those garbage. The real bust of the week should have been the chicken tenders, Sebastian, from
Oh,
yesterday.
those were bad, man. It's hard to mess up chicken tenders that badly.
Yeah. Brian just like rubbery as hell. We couldn't tell if it was overcooked or undercooked. It could have been either. Like it was just disgusting.
It's whack.
Yeah. Should have got the hibachi fried rice, Sebastian.
I just was in a state very quickly after we entered the event where I was incapable of making solid decisions.
Not that maybe for that reason, but for the other reason, the last stream state we went to, I got hibachi fried rice from the same vendor, and he spat it out in disgust. it was pretty bad. I have to admit, like it was dry as hell, and like I don't know, you can't really expect good food at that type of location. I feel. But didn't you mention? Oh, that was a different event that had good food, right?
It was still an Insomniac event, but yeah, it was a different venue, and it was like a separate vendor, like this Korean
Bulgogi type stuff.
yeah, bulgogi type place that had like this fried rice with bulgogi beef that was delicious.
Nice. Okay. Anything else for your Bool or bus? Very appropriate.
No, yeah, that's
straightforward. All right. Well, we mentioned Brian. You think he should have the floor? Bool or bus?
Yeah, I'll start off with some nice ones, I guess. For the context is I obviously just got back from New York due to some unfavorable circumstances. You know what? I'll start off with that, with the bust, right? Like, so basically, coming back from New York, was supposed to start working there at Spotify, actually. Those slime rat fucks. And so that's my first. That's my first bust. That's my first bust is the big suits at Spotify. These big tech motherfuckers. These slime rat piece of shit. Basically, so I'll start with that.
Nice.
So I'll
nice.
start with that. I'll bleep that in post. But essentially, I'll maybe I need a more refined pop off segment, but I'll keep this one short. Essentially, they playing with my damn life, and I won't have it. So that's my first. That's my first bust. That's my first bust. Yeah, we'll go into it another
Well
time
deserved. Once
it settles in a little bit. But yeah, the other ones will be a little bit New York themed, I guess, just because I just got back there. So obviously, the other things were fresh. Some Bool stuff is obviously the public transit, super nice, very accessible to be able to walk back and forth. And just go to places. Having everything nearby was really nice. Having a lot of cool restaurants and cool bars nearby. It feeds a lot into like the explorability of the city, of course, which I thought was really cool. I had one more bust also is just like the crowds in New York, man. I feel as though a big thing that people always say is like, oh, New York has that energy, or like you can't, if you can survive in New York, you can survive anywhere. It's like, dude, it's just too crowded in this motherfucker. You know what I mean? It's too crowded, and I think that people are like gaslighting themselves into trying to put a positive spin on how crowded it is, because it's so crowded to the point where um you're like elbow to elbow with people on the subway, super whack. And then, when you're in any restaurant, it's always like a very small table. And, if you extend your arms, you're probably like
Oh,
bumping shoulders with, other tables. Right. And I think it kind of was exemplified for me when, I went to dinner with my mom today, and then the guy was apologizing because he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we only have like one small table left." And having just spent a week in New York, I was like, "Dude, this table's fucking huge, dude." like, what the hell? Like, this is sick. So I'd say the crowds definitely gotta look away from those. So, but that'll be a quick summary of my bullet bust, and this actually bleeds a little bit into my top 5 as well. So I'll leave it there for now.
okay, good segue. So top 5. Well, first, yeah, Brian got the big shaft, and we're, as I said, very happy selfishly that he's here, but under like the circumstances that I never want. So, uh, as I mentioned, we're going to segue into our top 5. So, top 5 this week was mine, and I thought it'd be a little fun to do something different. So, it's top 5 pet peeves. Any volunteers to go first?
I go.
All right, Brian, you.
At number 5, I have loud chewing.
Oh,
For
that's a good
me,
one. Damn, yeah.
for
That is a
me, it's
good one.
just super annoying. I feel earlier on in youth, people should be taught to at least close their mouths. So that could be pretty annoying at times. Another one is people playing music in public without headphones.
Another good one.
I just don't even understand it. It's a less enjoyable experience. You're ruining the peace and quiet for everybody else. It's super annoying. So that would be my number 4. Uh, Number 3 is kind of what I was just saying in my bus, just like no personal space. I just experienced it. Um, it's just super whack. I don't know. I feel as though uh, when you feel like you're getting breathed upon in every direction, it's just kind of disgusting, to be completely honest with you. um, and then number 2 is, and I'm gonna have to explain this one, is people who people who are just fronting for no reason. So um, like a perfect example of this, going back to just like New York and the New York subways, is I was on the subway. I had to be on there for a quite pretty long time. I was traveling pretty far, and then a guy, he gets on the subway. He's only there for 3 stops. 3 stops is honestly 6 minutes, if even. And in that 6 minutes, he like whips out like some kind of finance book and is like really ravenously reading it. I'm like, dude, you're fronting. You're not digesting a single goddamn thing in that book right now. You're full of shit, right? You're full of shit. And so yeah, like there's, I'm gonna be in here for 20 minutes and I'm not gonna pull out a book because it's just like not something that seems like it'll make sense, right? But so that's just something that popped into my head. I don't know, people who be fronting for no reason. For me, that it's like you're sipping your own Kool-Aid. Like, dude,
Yeah.
you're not like that, dude.
Your time isn't that valuable, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what are you reading in this finance book in 6 minutes that's really going to be so valuable for you? Like, fuck, get the fuck out of here, right? So that's my number 2.
That's a great one.
And then number 1 is people who make boba their personality. That just has to be mine. That's a very unique one to me. But boba's great. The drinks are great, but it's just a drink. It's not that good. And so that's my number one pet peeve.
That's considering how much I agreed with the other 4, that's a strange one to have a 1, Brian. But it must really irk you.
Oh,
Like,
I'd say these are pretty unranked.
okay,
It's
yeah.
in no order. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't say that's like some kind of unforgivable pet peeve. But it just happened to end up there as I was saying them.
And I think I don't know if you want this mentioned, Brian, but you only heard about the top 5 like 30 minutes ago, and to come
Yeah.
up with those good ones so quickly, must have meant that it was on your mind, or like it's been there for a long time and it was readily available. So well
I'm a
done.
man. I'm a man that gets annoyed by many things, Ashwin. Not difficult. Not difficult for me to pull up 5, dude. Not very
Fair.
difficult at all, dude.
Well, I added a couple from yours. I'm at 9 now. But since Steve says
I
yeah, Steve says song of the week this week, why don't you go next, Sebastian?
Yeah, that sounds good. So, number 5, I'm gonna say "Baby on Board" bumper stickers.
We talked about that. That's a good one.
Think it's wildly selfish. Why should I care? You should just drive. Like, I don't care that you have a baby on board, bro. It's just highlights selfish behavior to me, and it sends a bad message to the rest of the world. 4 is millennials who haven't evolved past like the office style of deadpan, cringe, awkward
For
humor,
sure.
and they recycle the same decade-old memes, and it's just like, fam, you need to grow up. Like, you're gonna age yourself very rapidly if you don't evolve. It's just wildly obnoxious, and I kind of start hating people who are like this
Give me an
after a certain
example.
point.
When you say office memes, like you mean literally like the pictures of Dwight or
No,
like
like
Jim or
style,
something?
just the way their humor style. I can tell their entire comedic base is based off of that era of NBC no laugh track TV shows.
All this is something, Sebastian, I actually have been noticing a lot more recently, and I don't know if that's just like, you know, us getting a little older or something, but that actually is something I would probably put as like my honorable mention or something. I've been noticing it a lot. Like people are just starting to really fall behind in terms of,
Yeah,
I don't know,
man.
evolving their
I
comedy
feel
or
like
something.
this is a direct attack on me, I feel.
No,
No, you're definitely not
no,
included.
not at
Yeah.
all, not at
Yeah.
all.
No, it's a very specific thing. Whenever I go on Instagram, I'll see instances of it or something like that. Like in somebody's story or something, they'll just be like, "This isn't funny, man. You just come off as very lame." Um, number 3 is people who drive 10 miles or more under the speed limit. It's I get being safe, but if you're going like if you're going 30 and a 45, you're just being kind of an ass. No offense.
Oblivious.
Yeah, you're being oblivious and selfish as well. That's what I would say. People who make Number 2 is people who make their political affiliation a part of their personality. Um,
For sure.
and they just follow, and also like they follow politics right down the party line and have no room for nuance and take like attacks on politicians from their party personally. And I just think it's wildly lame and quite embarrassing. And number 1 by a large margin is people who say referees are people and they make mistakes too.
I'm
Uh,
with that.
I
Yeah.
I think it's one of the more bullshit things that people try to explain away incompetence with. If people at their jobs made as many mistakes as some of these referees do, they wouldn't have jobs, and that's kind of just the bottom line. So yeah, if you're like a referee sympathizer, you can go fuck yourself.
Referee sympathizer.
Yeah, I always say like you have to be a very strange person to want to be a referee, I feel like, because you kind of have to have the power trip desire in your DNA, I feel.
Like
They're basically
cops.
no, I always say they're basically people who are too soft to be cops.
So even worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like
Um
failed players or something, even be very salty about
failed
certain
players,
things.
I failed players sometimes I can somewhat sympathize with it. I don't think they wanted to be cops, they're just seeing it as like staying involved with the game. But
That's true.
oftentimes I just think referees are pieces of shit.
It's kind of gone in the other way where because there's like ref incompetency and the NBA is so scared of making any mistakes or having being definitive in the call. That's why these games are the last notoriously everybody's talking about it, right? Like the last 5 minutes take 45 minutes. Or
I wish it would take
the last
longer.
2 minutes take 30. Yeah. So that's what's going on.
No, I get very defensive when people want to eliminate reviews. I think that you should have as many reviews as you need. I feel like it should be perfect. but then
But
sometimes
the
I'll
reviews
watch.
have to be right.
Yeah,
Not in VAR's case, which is just even worse. I mean, because if
yeah,
you're going to spend the time and not do it right and then give us a bullshit reason afterwards, it just is more infuriating.
Yeah, and the only time it bothers me is when the call is obvious, but they're still
yeah.
going to the screen. That's the only time it really bothers me. It's like,
But
dude,
then
like I saw that.
there's
Like come on.
clear misses, dude. There's like, I'm watching NBA games. It's clearly off this guy, and you could look up at the screen and see it's clearly off this guy, and they just put it the other way. That's not reviewable. I don't
You have to
know. Like,
challenge it now, and I hate that. I wish it was still under 2 minutes. You could just automatically review out of bounds calls.
yeah,
But I
or
will say there's like a counter argument to that there should be more reviews because I watch some of these EuroLeague games and they have like unhinged referee reviews where the end of games it'll be like a minute left and it literally will take like 16 minutes and it's like this can't happen
uh,
either. This is
yeah.
not good either. So I see both sides, but I prefer the perfection side. And then my honorable mentions is just hot take culture, um, bad Uber drivers, which we
Yeah,
touched
fair.
on earlier, and then news anchors. But that's kind of just, yeah, I don't like news anchors very much. I think they're,
That's so vague. Just news anchors, pet peeve.
yeah, I didn't know. They honestly could have been on the top 5, but I felt that it was getting a bit personal and not actually like a pet peeve. But I just think news anchors are like these big empty vessels that are there to relay very dangerous messages, and they don't have
Fair
any
enough.
original thoughts themselves.
Oh, okay, yeah. From that perspective, I kind
Yeah,
of see where they're coming from.
Okay, very very good list, Sebastian. And I agree with. You'll see on my list. I have some of yours too.
nice.
Okay, I'll start. And actually, the biggest one I missed from Brian actually, it really annoys me, and I'm surprised I missed it. Was the loud chewing one? I'm
Yeah, that
like,
was an
it,
excellent one.
it was an excellent one. So I'll start off. I mentioned it in the past, but social media families just like putting their kids on blast constantly and doing stupid pranks and stuff, exploiting the children. And I thought I looked this up because I was actually curious. I don't think YouTube children are like SAG certified or whatever. So that there's apparently this law called the Coogan Fund or Coogan Law, where like if you're a child actor and you're like certified or whatever, your parents have to put a certain amount of the money they receive into a trust for you that you can get when you're 18, and it's apparently like 15 or 25%, which is not, you would think hope would be more, but it's not that much. It's more than nothing. But these YouTube children who are like making probably more money for their parents, if you sign out of your YouTube and you look at the homepage, explore or whatever, like 5 or 10 of the front page will be just family type videos and like, oh, the Lopez family or like the O'Brien family or something. And like what I fear is in 20 years when those parents who are maybe fuck up and like lose all the money that the kids made, help them made, and then they get into like these lawsuits because there's no protection for them for like these kids who are being exposed and stuff. I don't know. It's just very exploitative. And if your only skill that you can make money off is your family, it's just kind of a bust.
It's also that you're fucking up these kids'
Yeah,
lives, basically. Like
dude,
basically their life and their mental development. Like I don't know.
do you remember the one where like it was very controversial where the, the dad broke the kid's like Game Boy for no reason, just for like a video or something? Sort of like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it was
yeah,
just
yeah,
very
yeah.
busty. I just for clicks. Um, so number 4, I have neglectful pet owning and abuse. Just really pissing me off. If you're gonna take on another life, you gotta like give a little sacrifice and stuff. And it's like the thought of like not feeding your dog or like putting them into fights or whatever, just busty, or like leaving them out in the river or something. Just very, that one video of the girl throwing the puppies in the river, just fucking whack. So like just busty things. Number 3 is dirty athletes. People who don't play the game the right way. The one way, there's a couple I got from soccer, and I'm curious if you have any in the NBA. I have 2 for the NBA. So I said like Christian Romero, Anthony Lisandro Martinez from soccer, Steve's might know, might have the same opinion, and then Pat Bev and Draymond for NBA. Anybody, any other
Bruce
NBA player?
Bowen,
I
dog. Bruce
Yeah, I
definitely
Bowen.
actually thought about Yeah,
Throwback Bruce Bowen, dirty as shit, dude.
that's
I
a good
don't
one.
think
Yeah,
Pat Bev is dirty, but I would add Kayvon Looney to that list of.
Oh
He's
yeah,
probably
Looney's dirty as hell.
the single dirtiest player I've ever seen play basketball.
that's a good one.
It's not like egregious stuff, but he's pretty much dirty on every single play, especially when it comes to rebounding. He's just the master of shoving
Dude,
people
he's
in the
like
back.
arm barring people
Yeah.
in the neck, and it's like,
He's-
yeah, like how else are they gonna get the board? Like you're
Under the
choking
premise
them
of
out.
being
Like
clumsy, but he's not clumsy. He's just
He just
annoyed.
can't
Like,
jump, so like I think referees miss it because he can't jump, so it's all on the ground, so it just doesn't look like anything.
that's why I felt kind of bad for Domas last year. Like I think he definitely was getting outplayed on the boards, but then it's like Kayvon Looney's not good enough to be averaging 20 boards a game on Domas, and you'd be looking at some of the plays like, dude, this guy's getting choked out by by literally like whacked in the face. It's like you gotta call something, man. You gotta call something.
100% true. Yeah, that's a good ad. Another one. This is a throwback. Siebes Ryan Shawcross, if you remember him.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I kind of felt like there were a lot of dirty tackles over his career. But moving on. So I had two here, and I'm going to move one to honorable mention. But the one I'm keeping is difficult to open or bad packaging. I just feel like some things are like trying to be like Fort Knox over here, and I'm just trying to like get my medicine, man, or like open up like open up a screwdriver or something, or like a tool set, and it's just like you have to get pliers to do this thing. I just so many examples of busty packaging, over the top packaging that we don't need. And then my number one pet peeve, exacerbated by the fact I live in Irvine, is bad slash slow drivers. I drive a lot in Irvine, and the Culver has become a hellhole. And I won't get into specifics, but Steve's hit it on the head. If you're in the left lane and you're going 10 to 15 below, you are an asshole, and you need to be more observant of other people and not oblivious. And there was this thing circling around Reddit about like a cop who actually pulled over someone who was like holding up the left lane and had like 100,000 upvotes because people, it's a common trend, man. People want to see these people punished, and the left lane is a passing lane. Okay, so you shouldn't be passing on the right. It should never happen, and it
Culver
happens.
and Jamboree are only just gonna get worse and worse
Way
as
worse.
these homes get built. You know what I mean? And like these apartments get built, and it's just gonna get real bad. And like I think like I had mentioned it before, but like I've been seeing like more maybe like 3 times in the past year, like really bad crashes on Culver and Jamboree. It's like, how is this fucking happening, dude? Like, it's like just drive straight. Like
Yeah,
it's not a crazy, it's not a crazy road, you know. So I'll +1 to your slow drivers plus whatever type of driving's happening on Culver.
I'll give you a perfect example. I came back from Bryan to Meadowood, right? Coming on Culver, and I was in the middle lane, and I was just zooming past people on the left and the right, mostly on the left, actually, a couple on the right. And I was just like, damn, am I speeding? I look down, and I'm going 2 miles below the speed limit, and I'm like just zooming past people on the left. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, come on. It's bad. And I think soon I'll need to start like making posters and standing out on Culver saying the left lane is a passing lane, or go fast, or go the speed limit, or drive the speed limit, and then with like underlines underneath.
Yeah.
Or
I
God,
don't know. I don't know that the right left lane thing applies to surface streets, but I would appreciate you holding up a sign saying drive the speed limit.
You're right.
And we could do it in shifts.
It technically doesn't, but I just feel like it's an unwritten rule of society. Like in America, this is how it is. Like at some points, Culver and Jamboree get pretty like minor highway. I feel Jamboree especially like
Jamboree for sure. That's kind of a highway.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just 4 or 5 lane streets should follow some sort of order here. We live in a society.
I'm just imagining like on just because I saw it recently, like on a street corner, there's like a church holding like, repent for your sins or you're going to hell, and then there's Ashwin saying, "Fucking
Drive the speed limit.
drive the speed limit, dude. Drive the fucking speed limit, dude." Just standing right next to this guy.
Yeah. So that was my top 5 honorable mentions. Like I mentioned, Brian's Loud Chewing one was great. But the one that got bumped out was Tangled Wires. I felt
Oh,
like, yeah, I felt for a long time that Apple put magnets in their wired headphones just to fuck you and make it more tangled. It's like, it was just like, it would go into my pocket for like 10 minutes. It would come out like some sort of like graffiti fucked type situation, like all over the place. I don't know. And so Tangle Wires got booted. Liars, politician, athletes, um, actors who like recently resurfaced. Liver King just came up with my feed. Just like, this straight out lying. Like, I feel like if you're gonna lie, when people's backs are against the wall, they'll lie. It's fine. I understand it, but it's the level of intelligence that people like, they think of the people they're lying to. Like, they don't think that people will find out this type of stuff, and it's just, that's insulting. And then last one, I guess, would be tipping for takeout. It's kind of annoying when I'm driving to your store and you're asking me to tip because I'm picking up the food. I don't know. I'll I'll tip for delivery. It's fine, but I'm not tipping for if I drive to your store to pick it up. It's kind of whack. Not eating at the restaurant either. So that wraps it up for me. Any comments? So we'll move to Siebes' song of the week.
no, I think
I'm
you
good.
definitely nailed the tipping at takeout places. I'm always stuck with, am I supposed to do this or not? What's the etiquette here? And I feel like it's just,
I'm just
no, you're
rounding
not
up, dude.
supposed to.
I don't know. It's
Oh,
kind of an asshole thing to do, but I just round up.
I guess as a just an extra add-on to the tipping thing is when you're at a restaurant and then you're getting a check, and like the new thing is where they hold the machine up to you and they're like watching you input what you're gonna tip. Or
Is that
they're
a New
not
York
watching
thing?
you. No, no,
No,
no, no. They do it here all the time too. Like
yeah.
Okay.
you you ask for your receipt, and then like they just bring the machine up to you, and then you just pay, and then like the options to how much you want to tip while they're like holding it, and they're like not looking, quote unquote, but it's like, dude, like you're putting me in a fucking weird situation by doing this.
I wanted to end there, but that brings up a funny story, Brian. So I got a massage last week. I
Ooh.
think my neck was like killing me, so I went and got a
Oh,
massage.
Sebastian.
And so
Oh.
uh, I paid by card, and I said, "Can I tip after the massage?" So she left my receipt like at the front desk, and then as I left, it was a fine massage, actually pretty good. I went up to it and I said, "I'll tip you at the register." And then the lady like literally followed me, and then I had to show her what I tipped at the end. It's kind of like a little aggressive, in my opinion. And then after she saw the tip, like I gave her a nice tip, and then she's like, "Oh, very nice, thank you, sir." And then she shook my hand afterwards. And I was like, "Oh,"
That's
it's
what
like,
I'm saying,
yeah,
man.
it's like pretty
That's what
aggro
I'm
in your
saying,
face.
dude. That's what I'm saying, bro. That's exactly what I'm saying.
She literally made me like show the receipt where I signed in my name and like showed the tip. It was a little bit much, but yeah. Song of the week, Sebastian. Tell us about it.
So I chose Loading by Central C. It's like a few years old. It's a British drill, like rap song. Um, I've been watching Top Boy. It's a show
Yeah, you
about like
mentioned. Yeah.
roadmen in London. It's a fantastic show. If we had done our top 5 shows list, now it probably would have cracked it because it's that good. And this song was in one of the episodes, and I just really like the sound of it. And I believe Central C is one of the bigger artists over in the UK currently. So it's a good vibe and has plenty of roadman slang, so it's fun to listen to.
Very nice. Okay, that concludes episode 21. Brian, very happy to have you back. Steve,
Yes,
as
sir.
Glad
always,
to be
thank you for
back.
your time. Yeah. We'll have to get a proper pop up segment. I'm very interested to hear.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
Until next week, guys. Thanks.
Peace.
Yeah, adios.
Could've ran off the plug, but I kept it real and I showed him love. Lil' bro got the poker touch, where we grow up is so corrupt. Fancy me on a block, go nuts, I'm not in my bag, I'm loading. Back then it was hand to hand, nowadays I don't have no involvement. In the trap I stay on my own, I'm home alone, Macaulay coking. YJ no commented that it's complicated, cause the case still open. The boys in blue trying to find them clues in the station, problem solving. Bro just jumped out the ride with a mask on face like he dodging COVID. Jumped off the porch and went my own way, no way I don't owe no orders. Free all the guys and rest in peace to all of the fallen soldiers. The world full up